For me, at least, space is all about emotion, how you interact or how the choreography happens.
Anybody who truly is passionate about design has a little story that really takes you to space.
Talk about this fabric. So, more than making it look premium or something which is lavish, for me, it's a connection that the way I interact with particular textures. So, for you, when you design something, so what are those elements that you consider as an emotion?
You feel design before you see it.
Right.
Your journey of design is far before you've really entered the space.
To mention about this particular studio, guys, so Shreya designed this.
All of it had to do with understanding what the podcast starts for. First thing somebody needs to feel as soon as they come here is feel centered.
In a Swank Way, that's how we roll, chasing big dreams. Yeah, we're in control in a Swank.
So guys, the guest for today is Shreya. She represents the Bold Bard, a special design studio. And they exactly understand how to build spaces that speak to the body before the eyes. And this episode is for anyone who has ever said that, I don't know why, but I feel better here. So let's begin.
Started from the bottom, now we're leading the way. In a Swank Way, we're here to stay.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of InASwankWay. I have Shreya with me right now. Shreya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tushar. Thank you.
Yeah, so since this episode is about interior designing and spaces, I think people will be expecting more about design as decoration, but today I feel we should be focusing more on design as emotion, where because I feel, for me at least, space is all about emotion, how you interact or how the choreography happens. So, Shreya, I'm going to ask you something more about interiors today.
I'm actually more than happy to speak about this aspect of design, and very few people understand the nuance of how design plays on people's psychology and emotion. And I know we've spoken so deeply about design over the years, so I think it would be fun to share our experience with design on this podcast. So looking forward to this.
Yes, and to begin with, so I want to ask you first, how you got connected with the spaces and interiors?
So I think I believe anybody who truly is passionate about design has a little story that really takes you to space. And for me, it has been, very honestly, my childhood, the way things unfolded, how I was disconnected with spaces, and then suddenly I started to connect. So in terms of just being sensitive, I realized, how certain materials make me feel low, certain materials make me feel very aspirational, and it became a very gradual and obvious journey for me that I want to do this, especially when you are looking at festivals and occasions. People probably talk about how to decor a house, but for me it's the element of celebration and the feeling you need to or you wish to want at that time is where the entire storyline begins. So it's literally mapping my emotional journey is when I got really taken towards designing of spaces, and not limited to just four walls. Design is it's a holistic approach, if I must. And I think maybe this is what I was meant to do in my life, and I'm just blessed that I can give this knowledge to more people, as they approach. So yeah.
So Shreya, when we talk about design, right, for me, let's say talk about this fabric. So more than making it look premium or something which is lavish. So for me, it's a connection that the way I interact with particular texture, the surface or everything. So for you, when you design something, so what are those elements that you consider as an emotion?
So, Tushar, very interestingly, when we talk about emotion and space, there are few elements that we touch upon. Fabric or texture being one of them. The way the flow of the experience is, that is one. The temperature or the sensibilities of your body, how is that being tapped into? That's the third element of design. So we try and touch upon each of these intentionally to be able to weave a story and to bring a connect emotionally, right? Now you very interestingly spoke about a particular fabric, and we know, we go to all sort of people We meet so many people. We go to restaurants, fine dining versus, a little more cafe style. All of these elements play very, very important role. I'll explain to you with an example, Tushar, and this is very individual to any person. So for example, this is a velvet, but it has a hint of jutish effect to it, and I know your personal story. I know how you are, connected to your hometown or your village, so to say, and how you kind of like being rooted, earthed. That's why there's certain texture that will be a little more appealing to you, because everybody that I've designed for has a particular guideline that they don't even realize. It's two-faced, One is what gives them comfort and puts them to ground or reality, and second is what makes them feel aspirational.
Right.
And that's what life is about, right? You want to be comfortable, but you want to look forward to something that's a little more aspirational. So that's where understanding the client, understanding the brief, understanding this is what they want to feel in this space is where the layering begins, okay? I mean, versus when we talk about somebody who's, in the socialite circle, you will see the swankiest, the most softest velvets, and it's almost touch me not,
Yes.
because you would always sit straight. But that's the lifestyle that appeals to them. That's the lifestyle that talks about where they stand as a stature. So it's very important to understand what is their reality as people, and then pick up design elements. So yeah, there are a lot of places, elements of design that we work on. Temperature, it's one of my best way of designing is to understand what is the temperature we are going to maintain in this space, whether it's with fan, whether it's with AC, whether it's automated air conditioning, everything, because there are so many places when you enter, you feel design before you see it.
Right.
Okay, always. Your journey of design is far before you really entered the space. And it's, how do you feel it? You feel it, with touch, with senses. And that's the best way to work, is what you hear around and how you feel in terms of the warmth of space. And these are few elements, of course, there is an entire array of things that we work on, but just to touch upon a couple of things, these are some absolute basics we work on.
Yes, and to mention about this particular studio, guys, so Shreya designed this. She helped me actually, picking up a lot of things and, combine them and creatively design it. So whenever someone comes, as you said,
Right.
As you just said about, the journey starts way before you enter that space, right?
Correct.
So whenever someone comes, opens the door, and it's like, they always tell me, Tushar, the set is so meditative. We feel so calming, because whenever we have shoot, someone comes from different commitments, and then
Correct.
they travel, they have a journey, and then they reach here.
Correct.
So before sitting on this couch, that initial 10 to 15 seconds of them looking around is something that I really enjoy. And after every episode, I generally ask about how was their experience after the shoot. So they first thing, forget about all the questions, forget about the shoot part. Tushar, we love the set. So
I'm so
thanks to
happy.
you for that. But just like to sum up in maybe in a minute, what was your thought process when you started brainstorming with me for this particular set?
So firstly, I think, Tushar, I think just informally we've had a lot of conversation for your vision on this podcast, even before we started, or rather you threw that idea of designing a podcast setup for you, right? And just knowing or understanding how rooted you want it to be, how true to the topic you want to be. It's not just about designing. I know you've done, you've done doctors, you've done actors. So there are a lot of, aspects of conversations that you've had in the studio, but you wanted it to reflect honesty. And that's where the texturing started to come into play. Of course, your brand guidelines are so defined, it makes it easier for us to know, okay, this is a color palette that we can play along with, but then How do you add texture to bring in, I remember us brainstorming on the kind of plants, we want to do this a little moon effect, yet
Yes.
keep it very subtle, having this jute back at the back. So all of it had to do with understanding what the podcast stands for, and therefore aligning the entire pieces. Like I remember even the wooden blocks that we selected, the Buddha that we have, everything is with an intention to deliver a certain emotion. And of course, we can repurpose it in so many ways that it kind of represents the topic for the day. So yes.
And recently we shot for the first regional podcast for Vitthal, and people just loved it. They called me, messaged me saying like, your set looks so welcoming and so spiritual at the same time, and it is the different version of the same podcast. So.
I'm so happy. Actually, let me touch a point where you just said about, when people come into this space, and it's to the room that we are in. This is a very small corner that we've occupied.
That one more feedback also I've got, like a lot of people visit, they've seen this on bigger screens as well, but when they came here to see in person, so they're like, Tushar, दिखने में तो इतना grand दिखता है, and how you make it happen. So this is the expertise that I always tell them, that Shreya has put in a lot of efforts to do this.
I'm glad, and of course there is a lot of technology that's played the trick also, definitely. But I was wanting to touch upon this point, that where we are as studio, we have a station nearby, we have this lane where we enter the building. It's a pretty narrow lane, there is traffic all the time. So by the time somebody is actually coming up, there is a sense of, for a lack of better word, frustration. Ki, okay, I finally arrived, now what? But, and I think I did realize that journey much before, doing this studio, where I knew that the first thing somebody needs to feel as soon as they come here is feel centered. That all right, now we are here, this is happening, and it just calms you down. And I'm glad I'm just happy that I've been able to achieve that.
And I'll tell you, like, we have used a lot of natural elements here to make it soundproof. And if I want to tell you, this studio is not at all acoustic, or we designed that way.
Yeah.
So that is one special thing about this, that we tried the way we have plants. It absorbs, and jute is something that we are. So we played a lot of fabrics and natural elements and wooden elements here.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
Thanks to you, Shreya, for having that minimal thought process. Again, coming back to the minimal thought process, people think these days giving them a luxurious feel, or maybe something that reflects them. But have you ever felt, okay, let's say keeping it very minimal, or maybe something which is Instagrammable or a Pinterest image, and designing that space which is picture perfect, but still you feel uncomfortable, or you feel, okay, I shouldn't be there in that space. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, a lot of time. In fact, one of the things, I wouldn't claim that I don't refer Pinterest. It is an archive of references, right? It's what you do of those references is what makes all the difference. And since I've also designed your house, you know that I am somebody who's very against, let's do this on the wall. No, because at the end of the day, that doesn't reflect your personality. And more often than not, my clients have always come back to me saying that I look forward to coming to my house, because that's what is more important. All these terms, for me, these terms mean nothing, whether it's bohemian, whether it's minimal, whether it's neoclassical. If that doesn't truly stand for you and your liking, it doesn't mean anything. Following trend, you will be designing your space, so to say, every 2 years, 3 years, because you'll never be satisfied. But your house, or in fact for that matter even your office, is a place where you spend most of your time, and that needs to make you feel centered. It makes you feel focused, and at the same time aspirational, right? Now if you own a space, why should it talk about very generic things in life, right? For that you have a hotel. For that you have Airbnb facilities. Why would you want to do your house, which is just because it's Pinterest worthy? It's not really worth it. So I would say yes, my take on picture perfect spaces is that they are imperfect. Because if they don't vibe with you, they aren't perfect.
Yes.
So it's just that. And vibing should not just be about a day or two or a month, right? Vibing is, I look forward to going to my house, to my room, to my living room every single day. That for me is a picture perfect space. And even if that means a wall is chipped, so be it. You know, I have retained walls with chipped edges because somebody's pet has scratched and the pet is not there anymore. We've retained it because that's an emotional connect. Why should everything be?
I should actually not talk about much about retaining, because you know how many things we retain.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also now let's talk about clients. Like as personalities, when you brainstorm with them, or maybe when you have your initial conversation, what are the emotional aspects that you consider maybe to take that project ahead?
So see, when I'm talking with clients, it's, of course, we have a very detailed conversation, which is verbal, of course, right? But when I am actually speaking to them, my noting is of a lot of their non-verbal language. You know, how are they sitting? Whether they're on a sofa, they are comfortable sitting onto the floor, whether the feet is down there, very hoity-toity, or, you know, are they laid back? The body language talks very vastly about the kind of people you're going to be designing for. And it's very important you note that down, all right? And with that, they will be able to tell you what's making them comfortable and what's making them uncomfortable without them realizing why is a certain place uncomfortable for them. And it could simply be the depth of the sofa is 1 inch lesser.
Right.
And it's still making them so uncomfortable. For us, 1 inch is nothing, right? If you talk in a whole bit. But when you talk about personal experience, that 1 inch makes the entire difference to space. So it's just, when I meet clients and when I'm taking brief, a lot of designers these days do a lot of Zoom meetings. I prefer my first few meetings to be a one-to-one, because it's very important to understand their verbal language of communication, and even in person, because at the end of the day, when you do meet the person, you don't want to meet them as a fresher, as this project has started. So let that become, get done with in the start. So that's why my first few meetings is always personal. I make notes of all these,
Verbal
whether they have verbal plus non-verbal points. How is, what's the temperature of the AC, how fast is the fan, very small things, but I make note of all of this, because that is when I'm designing solutions for them, for their space, I also have an argument ready that, listen, this is what I saw, this is what I feel, and therefore this is what I'm proposing. And more often than not, my clients don't disagree.
That's an emotional connect, I think.
Yes, yeah.
And Shreya, let's touch upon now biophilic designs. For me, plants are important. The way you see jute, that I was emphasizing more on. So what is your take? How these elements play a very important role? Because these days people are behind natural things like stone or maybe marbles.
Yeah. So I think I have a very strong opinion in terms of, there's so many things in the market that replicate or in a way are man-made to copy all these biophilic elements, right? But I think the idea of being biophilic is actually being natural, right? And we, especially us who are in city, as we call them, the concrete jungle, we just innately, human body is designed such that we want to feel closer to nature at every given point, because that's something that will always calm you down even in the most aggressive situation of your life. So biophilic space can really calm you down, right? So if you are, say, at 100% of aggression, a biophilic space can literally get your aggression down to 70%. That means there is 30% of damage control right there. Now that's the power of having a biophilic space, because you're grounded, you are in nature, you're being true to yourself, right? You won't go to a jungle and go crazy, right? After a point you will be like, I feel calm and soothed. So that's the idea of biophilic design. Then that's in terms of how it emotionally enters a space. When you look at it architecturally, it has multiple benefits, like your temperatures drop down. They act as sound barriers. So for example, if you've studied the architecture or designing in our own country, because we have extreme heat in the south and we have extreme cold in the north, typically you will see marbles and stones, cooler materials being used in the north, because when the summers hit, they're really, you need to have materials that cool you down, and that's a more naturally available material out there. Okay. Versus in the south, though it's very humid and it's hot, wood has the tendency to be able to hold the heat such that it doesn't make the space overtly hot. And of course then you have natural stone, kota, all of these, jaisalmer, dolpur, all of these stones that help you calm down. Even the paint, you use limestone paints onto the wall. So all of these materials help you counter the extremes of nature within the space that you're living in. So usually you will see a 3-4 degree temperature difference in your own house if you're using natural material. And that's the beauty of having a biophilic design. And I feel that is honestly the future, because we all know that where we are headed with global warming, and all of us, most of us need AC on 24/7. But if we are able to just do our little bit by just introducing natural materials as investments, most of them shy away from it because they're far more expensive than the factory made product. Okay. But look at the longer vision to this. It is what everybody should at some point endorse and utilize for themselves, because let's face it, the generation ahead need to also be living in a sustainable environment and not only in a made up environment. So that's where I feel my liking towards biophilic design comes towards.
Can a room ever feel too perfect, too curated, like it's rejecting your presence?
Picture perfect spaces is that they are imperfect, because if they don't vibe with you, they aren't perfect. So why would you want to do your house which is just because it's Pinterest worthy? It's not really worth it.
It's your space, right? And if you want to define it with an emotion, so what kind of space or what kind of emotion it will be? So with that, Shreya, again, one more thing. A lot of people are very well connected, emotionally connected with their pets, right?
Absolutely.
So while designing spaces, any space, so how you make a balance of having it human friendly as well as pet friendly?
So Tushar, you obviously know, like, I've had a pet, and I can absolutely understand the emotion of having a pet in space. And let me tell you, any client who ever has a pet, more often than not, the pet becomes a center point of designing the entire space.
Okay.
Whether it's a cat or a dog, typically these two, because other pets are slightly more easier to maintain. They don't have so much of do's and don'ts while designing a space. Okay, so I'll limit this conversation to having a pet cat and a pet dog. Typically, of course, especially cats, they have very sharp claws. You'll find them scratching onto the sofa. For example, when I had my dog, every mark that he left on the home, I was very proud of, okay? But that's me as an owner. I understand that there is a transition of a visitor versus also a designer in this space. So as designer, I would always, of course, making sure, firstly, the well-being of the pet in the space is very important. And for cities like Mumbai, where the houses are very small, whatever best we can do in terms of materiality, I strongly recommend we do, because at the end of the day, how much ever you love the pet, they can't talk back to you, in a language that you will understand verbally. So it's your duty as a designer and as a pet parent to give them a very sustainable environment where their growth is as good as your own child, so whether it's their whether it's their bone, whether it's their spine, everything that a pet can have issue with in that species can be dealt with if you've used correct materials in space. All right.
Okay.
So for that, the flooring plays the most important role. All right. Coming to fabric, there are certain fabrics that we do not recommend. For example, as much as we love jute, we will not recommend jute for a pet house, simply because pets shed, okay, and with their claws they can always tear open the fabric. So a softer, closely knit fabric is far more advisable. So in those terms, again, in terms of color, there are texture, so we pay attention to those. Second is, when there are pets, we take extra care about plants, because there are certain plants that are absolutely toxic to the animals. So to be able to have that knowledge that, all right, if you have a dog or a cat, a certain plant should not be in the vicinity, and if it is, then it should be out of the reach of the pet. So all of that is taken care of. Now this is very pet centric. When it comes to the human centric experience, we then start playing with colors. Okay, that all right, if we can't play a lot with texture, we can play a lot with pattern and colors.
Okay.
So we introduce more of those. Then we work on how air conditioning or dehumidifier or extractors where you can vacuum the house, how effectively you're using that in space, because a lot of pet parents also complain a lot about allergy. I've been one of them. So how can you control the environment that you are comfortable as well as the pet is comfortable is where this where design really comes into play, and we always try to balance that out. So yes, any house that has a pet is my favorite house and I love designing them, and of course we need to find a balance on in terms of aesthetic, but the pet always takes the forefront in that case. So the decision is kept taking the pet in mind.
Nice. And I'm sure this will help a lot of people who are having their pets.
Absolutely.
And Shreya, let's talk about three major categories of spaces that, as a designer you contribute to. One is residential, then commercial and public spaces.
Correct.
So interaction and the number of people in these spaces differs, and the requirements also.
Right.
But then how emotionally you think about these spaces and then curate something for them?
So Tushar, what really happens is, of course, all three spaces, like you said, have very different target audience. For example, for house, it's a very specific focused target audience, and it's a smaller target audience. When you're looking at a corporate office or a commercial space, you have a larger target audience when you talk about the age group. But what differs there is, it's a very focused area of work. So you know what's the output you're wanting to get in that space. Whereas when you're going to a public space, it's a very generic target audience. So you need to think about a 5-year-old versus a 70-year-old while you're designing a public space, right? Now, what we usually do as a practice is firstly understand the different elements that's going to come into space. For example, in house you may have a visitor, you will have maids, so on and so forth. How are we going to tackle security in that space, all right? Versus when you have an office, you have predominantly, they are adults, they are all educated people in this space, from your junior level employee to the director in a space, 50 people or 100 or 500 depending on the count. But at the end of the day, each of them have to produce a certain output in that area. So each of those zones get very focused upon, and therefore, all right, how are these people treated at the reception point? What is their experience when they've entered their building, which may not be just their office building, but it may be the office may be a part of a bigger building, right? So what is that experience? Therefore, tapping into the smaller, going from macro to micro. And when you're coming to a public space, which is, imagine entering an amusement park. So how's the ticket going to be checked? How are they going to be frisked at the entry? Or how are the queues going to be? What are the security? If there's any kind of an accident, what are the kind of camera system or first aid system we need to have in place. All of this is first mapped as elements that these will be factored into the overall experience. Now these are pointers, all right. From here you look into the emotional aspect. Is a woman going to feel fine or safe if she is openly frisked, or do we need a curtain, or we only need a detector to frisk them and no human frisking to be done here? All of this needs to be emotionally evaluated for that space and then be advised as a solution that, you know what, as designers we feel this is where we come in. Of course, this is not a designer's sole job, it's us to understand the emotional interaction. But when we speak to the client, this is also very collaborative for the consultants that have been onboarded. So as designer, when we talk about emotional journey, we also talk about this emotional journey with the consultant, that I don't want my client to feel this, or I want my client to feel this. So that's one part of it. Second is, when we're playing with texture, fabric, temperature, we are actually mapping the journey from home to the seat that they're going to be occupying in that space, all right. So from curiosity to mystery to frustration to unveiling to excitement to a little drop. You know how a heartbeat is. If you ever have a space that has, or rather you see a heartbeat that just goes this, you know there's a problem, right? So when you see that there is an up and down in the cardiogram report, this is fine, this is interesting. Imagine the same logic being used to a space. Then when the emotion is just this, you know that the space is not going to sustain itself. But the moment you're able to touch the high notes and the low notes of emotion in each of these spaces is when you know you've designed a good space. And that's when you'll see more footfall, more productivity, more happy quotient in this space. So that's how we map, journey, each individual. And for public spaces especially, you need to understand the psychology of a 2-year-old to a 5-year-old to a 15-year-old, because teenagers, they are the most difficult people to please because they have an opinion of themselves, of their own, yet they don't really know what they want. It's a very seesaw kind of a generation, to the 30s, to the 60s. So everybody have very peculiar thought process, and you need to map each of their emotions while you're designing, so that somewhere you're able to produce a holistic design.
Right. And with that, I think amusement park. Remember when we were kids, that line of Essel World mein rahunga, main ghar nahi nahi.
Absolutely.
So not at the not only the entrance but the exit, how they used to
exactly
make that bond with you, so that you come again and again.
Absolutely.
There.
And that element of I want to come back to this place.
Yes.
That feeling of, if you're going back home happy that okay, I'm leaving the space, there's a problem.
Yes, yeah? You should come back to the space.
You should feel happy that you're going home, but with that feeling that I want to experience this again. That's a good design. And that's what I always strive, that even if you're designing an office, I want the employee to look forward to the next day.
They should come back next
Exactly. They should want to come back next day.
And there are people, they also mention that I feel like home at my office. So that is one of the biggest compliment, because almost 9 hours, at least 9 hours we spend in office hours, and when we go back home, we have to actually have that connection of home and office space.
Absolutely. I think this entire narrative of work being stressful needs to somewhere be dealt with, and I genuinely feel design has the power to kill that narrative. Yes. It's a narrative that we've built in our head, but just small things in spaces in your workspace can really make your work life a lot more enjoyable. So yes, design has that power, and I truly believe that.
Yes, thank you so much, Shreya. With that, one question for you. Let's say it's your space, right? And if you want to define it with an emotion, so what kind of space or what kind of emotion it will be?
Wow, that's a first, Tushar. I'm a holder of memories, okay? So I know, and in some sense, I'm rebuilding my life right now. So I would imagine my space to be, of course, full of greens. I like being grounded. I like being connected to nature, but I have a very aspirational, feeling of achieving the ease of life, So of course my materialities, colors and all would differ, but I still see a pristine white house with a lot of green. Maybe influences, I love London, like it has a piece of my heart there. So influences of British architecture in it, but predominantly white house and stocked with paintings and memories of people that are dear to me. And for me, that's a house I imagine every night when I sleep, every morning that I wake up. That's what I want to build for myself. I don't look at a mansion, I just look at a cozy space where I go home and I feel, yes, these are my people. And even if they're not around me, they are still with me. So for me, that's the emotional connect I build with the space. And it's like a blank canvas. And then you're adding memory on it. So yes, that's my take on my space.
Wow. And let's say you go back home to this space and you want to give a hug. So what kind of hug would be that?
Oh, I think it's just gonna be, of course, first and foremost, I would want to have my pet with me. But if, I know this is not a human question, but I want a warm, happy to be back home, warm chai, a swishy cushion kind of a hug that I've done well through the day and I'm doing well. That's the kind of just reassurance kind of a hug that I want, that yes, this is good, life is good, and I think space does that to you. It can do that to you, and it's just about getting those right things in place.
Okay, so Shreya, I understand your space is very much connected to you and how emotional you are. But now let's break something and let's bring some quirkiness to the discussion that we are having. So I have some questions that I have jotted down for you. So the first one is, what's one space you walked into that instantly made your screen crawl, and why?
All right. So Tushar, of course, I'm very sensitive to texture and material and stuff like that. But one space that I don't want to name the people or person or anybody, but what makes my skin really crawl is dark and unclean spaces.
Oh.
Untidy. There is no reason for you to keep your house or your space dirty. Okay, they can be dark, but not dirty. And when I see dirt, hair, it immediately freezes me as a person, and I feel, nah. So I think just that as a space, no. Dark spaces, absolute no.
Okay. And let's say material and textures, do you consider a design weapon subtle but emotionally powerful?
All biophilic materials. I think natural stones, pure wood, natural paint, line paint, I think they are absolute game changers in space, for sure.
Yep. Then we talk a lot about visual impact, right? Then tell me, how do you want your rooms to physically feel to someone's body?
I think comforting, especially, technology has connected us to the world outside, but it has somehow disconnected us within the world that we live in. All right. And I think what human people what human really crave these days is actually comfort and touch and wanting to feel belonged. And I want that space to do that, feeling that, even if you have a dysfunctional setup, or you aren't talking to your partner, your spouse, your parents or whatever, the space should be that warm hug for you. So that's the feeling I think I would touch into. I would want my space to hug for.
Yeah. And just now you mentioned about comfort. So I want to ask this one question which I was holding back from long. So have you made any space uncomfortable intentionally?
Yes, I have.
Why? I mean,
So, you know how joint families are, and how, of course, the grandparents, mothers, they love hosting people. But I've had, way early into my career, I've had a client who's come and told me that, I have a lot of guests that keep coming to my house and they just don't leave.
okay.
And if you can address this problem, is all that she told me very subtly, to just know that yes, they practically every day would host about 8 to 10 people every day, and she was a homemaker. So you can understand the kind of pressure you go through. And all I had to do was create an informal lounge for them and create a very uncomfortable setup that, all right, I think we need to go back home.
Okay.
So yes, I have done that very
I
intentionally.
think we were talking about pet friendly, but this is something guest friendly. Hack, I think you can share with your friends.
Yeah, ergonomics plays such an important role for sure.
Yeah. Okay. If you had to seduce someone with a space, not a word, just a room, what would you design?
Oh, I have a weakness for open kitchen going into a living room, of course divided by this beautiful breakfast table come dining table. And I think that femininity going into the masculinity of space, where you can just cook together, you can have your meal together, you can watch Netflix together. Like, for me, that's a very seductive setup, and I would hands down want to design that for my own house too, for that matter, So yeah, that for me is a very seductive space.
Yep. Do you think most modern homes are emotionally numb? What are we losing in our obsession with clean and minimal that we discussed?
Yeah, so I think it's that, Tushar. I feel homes back then, even, I would say 15, 20 years ago, even if they were not lukes for the term of, these really high class materials that we have, they had far more character. Because the clients were that much more involved with what makes them comfortable in space. Okay, now with Pinterest and Google as weapons, they are more of a destroyer than a constructor, and that's where I feel the gap is. So if we understand why the platform has been introduced, and then you use your own logic and emotional connect to the space, that gap can be reduced.
What is minimal in terms of design language for you?
See, there is honestly, minimal is doing what is needed for you, in my opinion.
Because for me, this is minimal.
Exactly, right? I am a hoarder. For me, a minimal space will still be 5 wardrobes, but I am not, in case of 5, I'm not doing a 10. I'm still optimally using the space. That's minimalism. Having one ledge, if you're following minimalism as a lifestyle, then the Zen or the Scandinavian language works for you.
Okay.
But as a person, if you're not minimalist, then your definition of minimalism is going to be far different. So minimalism, if I want to still simplify, maybe I would keep it very clean lines, no moldings, very uniform texturing or coloring. But in terms of storages, we kind of look at minimalism for storage. No, then that's very lifestyle based. So that's a notion that one needs to understand before you tag your space. I'm a very minimalist person, because I've done a minimal house with 16 feet of storage at one go, but it still looks minimal, so it's the lifestyle that you're holding.
Okay, so don't go for Instagram or Pinterest.
Yeah.
Okay. What's one texture you think is criminally underused in interiors, and what mood does it evoke?
Oh, I think the trend is picking up, but I would love for us to use more natural paints. That
Limestones.
I feel they can be real. They are real game changers. They soothe you. Just they don't infuse toxic air into the space. So in just they're very friendly, like they're human friendly in nature, and then they drop debris. I genuinely feel like we can do better with paints. I think we are doing well with wood and marble and jutes and fabrics, but I think wall surfaces, and I feel people have very strong incorrect notion on wallpapers. I think we can do wonders with wallpapers. You just need to choose the right one.
Yes. Okay, so if you had to describe your design style as a scent, a sound, and a fabric, what would they be?
Oh, nice. As a scent, I genuinely resonate with the Issey Miyake, the original Issey Miyake scent in general. It's perky, it's fruity, it's fresh. It's from day to night, so it's timeless.
Okay.
So I would think it to be more on that line. In terms of fabric, I would think myself to be a little more Swedish.
Okay.
So it's a little, it has a whole flat texture, but it feels very warm and very cozy. So you kind of, and it's still, like I said, timeless. So I feel like that's more. And the third one was?
Sound.
Sound of water. Yeah, it just soothes you down. Till so far I haven't come across anybody who doesn't like the sound of water or of wave. Yes, so I think that again, timeless, again grounding, again something that.
No, I think more of these are natural elements.
Yeah. I mean, suede is not, but it's just the idea of being timeless and of course natural. So yes, I mean, I would want definitely, and I think that's something I take pride in. Whether you go to a house that I have designed 5 years, 8 years, 10 years ago, the house is intact the way it is, people are still happy, that's a definition of being timeless in that space, that you're not running, it's not that fast changing spaces, right? You're like,
And I love those spaces where you don't need a lot of maintenance.
Absolutely.
And a lot of spaces like I've seen something about Sabyasachi's places, like the less you maintain, the more beautiful it becomes, right?
So I'm like currently as we talk, I'm also working on a project where one of the brief that we are very clear on is the space needs to age well. Okay, so whatever material you use, it needs to age well, whether it's the color or the texture, because that's when you've done the right job. The first couple of months or years are always good, but it's the aging of the material that makes the whole difference. And yes, I think Sabyasachi, way he blends colors, textures and patterns together, I think he's just beyond words in general.
Yes. Okay. So when a client says make it luxurious, what does that feel like to you? Under your feet, in your hands, in your breath?
Of course, first and foremost, luxury is comfort.
Yes.
Okay, so I can have a Versace sofa or a Fendi sofa, but that need not necessarily be comfortable, right? So luxury is comfort, cool, soothing, grounded. So maybe, of course, this is very specific to me. It will differ to a client, right? But for me, either a clean Kota flooring or a pristine white flooring, soothing to the feet, because I hate wearing shoes. Especially at home, I want to wear barefoot because that's my way of just being connected to Mother Earth. Mm-hmm. So I want to be on, natural material, fresh air, dehumidifiers. There needs to be a fragrance lingering around this space. So, there are these electric fragrance diffusers that are, beautiful, that can be concealed in your house. So for me, tapping into those little details is absolute luxury.
What's one object or material that changed the entire emotional tone of a room, even though it was barely noticeable?
Honestly, it can be wallpapers.
Okay.
Genuinely, I'm a big endorser of wallpapers. And this could be a solution for the most stringent budget clients to the most luxurious, splendidly spending clients. Just adding element of texture to the wall through a wallpaper, self texture, can elevate the way you feel in the space for sure.
And how do you design a room that calms the nervous system without making it boring?
Yeah, again, is it for me or it's for client?
Like client can say like I want this, but then of course let's say talk about minimalism or maybe something only white or something. So it should not look boring. Like
Yeah.
how you can still give the life.
So, of course, the understanding is first to know what the client wants, and then, in some sense, you become a space therapist to the person, because you need to then explain to them that their current situation or a problem could be an organization issue and not really the space issue, and therefore design in a very organized manner the space for them. And then, color, texture, artworks, it can really soothe you, at the same time make the space so much more livelier and happier. So yes, organization and artwork.
Okay, this one is interesting. Can a room ever feel too perfect, too curated, like it's rejecting your presence?
100%. All your hotel rooms. All your hotel rooms. And the whole problem is it is rejecting your presence for a simple reason that it's not designed for you. I can stay and it's my room yet not my room. You can stay, it's your room, it's still not your room.
Yeah.
A perfect room is an imperfect room. That's my
Just
take.
for usability, that's it.
That's just for visibility.
Okay. Have you ever walked into a stranger's home and instantly understood their emotional state just from the space?
Oh, so many times. So many times. Like I said, the way they sit, they eat, the way they talk, how the things are kept in the house, how well maintained the house is in general, speaks volumes about the lifestyle and the emotional state of the people. You will see, the kind of storages that they have, if they are cluttered, if your house reveals everything about you, everything. So I think almost every time, if I'm going to a space meeting a client, I will more often than not understand their mental space.
Okay, interesting. So what's your take on design rules like symmetry, light balance or open space? Are they intuitive or just tradition?
No, see, of course, these were guidelines given in terms of design, I feel, doesn't have a structured guideline. Okay, for me, design is very intuitive. But yes, these, when we talk about, symmetry, balance, light, they are frameworks designed or given to young designers to firstly understand what design entails, okay, and then it's your intuitiveness where you can play along these to bring in that element of, oh, this is different, okay, I wasn't expecting this in this space. But only if you understand the framework will you be able to work against the framework. If you don't know what the framework is about, what are you going to design?
Right.
So there's no right and wrong. Some people do excellently well if they are following the elements of design or the framework of design. And people like me are more intuitive, though we are very, I have 6 years of formal education in design. But I'm a very intuitive designer because for me, my intuitiveness comes from people and not just the space. So it's an amalgamation of both.
So one last question from my side, and more than question, it's a guide or suggestions from your side to people who wants to design their spaces in the future. So in terms of emotional journey in the space, okay, whether it is residential, commercial, or maybe public spaces, what emotional factors that they should be sharing with their designers so that that journey becomes very easy?
So I'll tell you what, Tushar, more than half the time the clients are not even aware of their emotional state. Why and what are they feeling in their space? The onus typically comes on to the designer to ask these questions, okay? That what are you lacking in your current space? Why is this the way it is? And even if these are uncomfortable questions, not every client will respond to it immediately. A lot of time clients tell me, just do it, you know. But it's on to you to be a little more persistent as a designer, to understand and tap into the same set of questions in 10 different ways, so that you're able to extract what the problem is. If you're an aware client and you know what are your pain points, please list it down. That I don't feel happy in my bedroom, I don't feel comfortable in my bedroom or my sofa or the living room. I want to lie down and feel like, you know, this is my bedroom in my living room. These are the, if you're aware as a designer, that as a client, that these are the emotional aspects of me wanting to experience in this space, share that with your client. And no information is an incorrect information.
Right.
Okay, if your designer is sensitive and understands the value of human emotion in space, they will understand where you're coming from. And it could be as basic as, yeah, it takes me 15 minutes from my parking lot to come back home, right? That 15 minutes of journey in your own building, if you're taking, कि घर पहुंचने को ही 15 मिनट लग रहे हैं, it's a frustrating journey, those 15 minutes. A designer can counter it in the first 10 seconds of the house. But you need to share that information so you can have a solution.
What I feel, because of Pinterest and all these ready-made, templates,
Correct.
people are so fascinated about how their space should look like.
Correct.
And match up to some perfection, and they forget the basic needs that as a
Absolutely.
person to enter or live in that space, what is required for them.
Absolutely. And I think now that we've gone a step ahead with AI generating images for us, and my heart aches every time I see something that is AI generated, because it can't get more impersonal than that image, you know. And if you are getting sworn away by an AI generated image, you genuinely need to tap into your emotions and understand why are you not willing to make a space for yourself.
And one of the reasons to address this, Shreya, today, because with the technology coming in, AI is there, but then VR is there, then
Absolutely.
AR is there, everything is there. You can, explore without being there.
Correct.
But the only part missing is how emotionally I will connect to that space when
Absolutely.
I am not feeling the sound, I am not feeling the air, I am not feeling the temperature or whatever, the
Absolutely.
textures.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was
Yes.
my thought process behind it.
Yes, that's true. I think, where technology right now, most of us are running away, and I truly personally believe that people are running away from their emotions. And it takes a lot of courage to own up to that and want to work around it. Having said that, and technology is their escape route to find solution. However, the same technology can actually find the real solution also. Like VR can do wonders for you if you amalgamate a truly designed space to experience it before it actually comes into life. That's when you use technology, not to create a space and then say, all right, I'm gonna be, make this for me. That's not what it should be doing.
Yes. And Shreya, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this particular segment because you know how spaces I personally like, and experiment and build something new is always passion and challenge. And thanks for your contribution to this journey. And yes, thank you so much.
And thank you, Tushar. I think you're one of those very few people in my life. I love having conversations, especially related to design, art, emotions, and I really genuinely, I was looking forward to this podcast. We've been talking about it since really long, and I hope I've been able to add value to this conversation to our viewers, and I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for watching. If you have any questions, shoot out to Shreya. She will definitely respond and give her expertise. And
Yes, I should.
Keep watching, subscribe us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
After this episode, I'm sure it is very much clear how emotion play a significant role in any design spaces. And if you really like this episode, then please do share it in your network. And if you have any more questions, as I said, please mention in the comment section. Shreya will address them. And stay tuned for such more episodes.
In a swank way, that's how we roll, chasing big dreams. Yeah, we're in control.